excerpts of your book, Imperial Hubris. And I was really taken by, again, your bluntness and your candor about the war in Iraq. And correct me if I misquote you, but this is what I saw. Referring to the Iraq War, it was an avaricious, premeditated, unprovoked war against a foe who posed no immediate threat, but where defeat did offer economic advantages. Where defeat of Saddam Hussein. Am I misquoting? Or
no, sir, that's exactly correct.
Okay.
So, Mr. Chairman, that should give him credibility in your eyes
it does
for all the other things that he's telling you today.
And if you read on further, sir, I say part of the problem is that the Congress has unilaterally abdicated its responsibility to declare war.
I don't disagree with you.
Yeah, it is not
I'm not
directed solely against the Bush administration, sir.
No, listen, and I don't want anyone to leave with the impression that you only have issues or criticize Democrats, because your criticism is rather broad.
Very Catholic, sir. Both
You're very Catholic.
With a small C and a large C.
Yes, I'm much that way myself. The U.S. Gadfly ambassador in Kabul, Zalmi Khalilzad, who's now on his way to Iraq to replicate the disaster he created in Afghanistan. That's a quote that's attributed to you.
Yes, sir. That's a correct quote.
And John O'Neill, who was the FBI chief of counterterrorism, you had this to say about him. Mr. O'Neill was interested only in furthering his career and disguising the rank and competence of senior FBI leaders.
Yes, sir. I think I also said that the only good thing that happened to America on 11 September was that the building fell on him, sir.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, just if I could...
I'm not going to... I'm going to keep my time here. You know, you're really tough on Senator McCain.
Sir, he's a perfect example of a man who is tremendously courageous and has a lot of patriotism, but not necessarily a correlation with brain power, sir.
Well, you said this about him: the Senator's no torture campaign reveals him for what he is, a little man with mediocre intelligence, a taste for bullying, and an appalling temper who thinks the presidency is his birthright.
Yes, sir.
You certainly don't like Dana Priest.
Sir, I don't like anyone that endangers my grandchildren, sir. And she called me both on CIA aircraft wanting me to give her numbers of their registration, and called and asked me to identify what she called CIA prisons overseas. I refused to do both, and I advised her that under normal circumstances a CIA officer who revealed those things would be in prison. What I did find interesting, and I agree with you. I think we've targeted the wrong enemy, or have been diverted from our efforts against terrorism. And I think we have misled ourselves and misled the American people when we talk about Osama bin Laden in a way that doesn't afford him those attributes that make him so dangerous to us. You know, we get lost about Saddam Hussein. We've created, in my judgment, a training ground for those terrorists that would do us harm. And I guess, how do we, in your judgment, well, first of all, let me ask you this. I thought it was very interesting. We're talking about opinion, for example. And,
we continue to hear from this president, and I'm try to take this in a way that I'm not making this a partisan attack, but I think you're so right when you say, when we just simply suggest that they hate us because of our values, we miss something. They don't hate us, according to you, because of our values, but because of our policies in the Middle East. Is that?
And their impact, yes, sir.
And their impact.
In our,
What policies in particular do you think that we as a Congress should examine to diffuse and eliminate and eradicate terrorism?
I don't think you should reconsider any policy to diffuse or eradicate terrorism unless it's in the interest of the United States.
I understand that.
Yeah, you don't appease people.
But what policies are feeding?
He's been very clear. Unqualified support for Israel, our ability, at least until recently, to limit the price of petroleum, our support for states who are deemed oppressors of Muslims throughout the world, especially Russia, China, and India, our presence, civilian and military, on the Arabian Peninsula, our military presence elsewhere in the Islamic world, and probably most damagingly, 50 years of support for Arab tyranny around the world, in which our European
You make
colleagues.
a very interesting comment, too, about when we talk about those whom consider Osama bin Laden an iconic figure. They don't necessarily hate freedom, but what they see through their eyes is his resistance to the government, if you will, of Saudi Arabia, which you characterized as a tyranny.
Well, I think, sir, of all the things I've said today, defining the Saudis as tyrants is a pretty solid definition. I think I would back away from having you listen to me on this point and simply look at the polls that have been conducted in the Islamic world over the last 15 years. Inevitably, large majorities in most Muslim countries admire the way Americans live. Inevitably, in the 85 to 90% rate, they hate the impact of our policies in the Islamic world.
You see, we're agreeing. It's making me very nervous, Dr. Schuer, that I'm agreeing with you.
I'm a very reasonable guy, sir.
I can sense that. You're very reasonable, and you're Catholic.
I am,
you know. But I try to convince Mr. Rohrabacher that opinion is important because, particularly in a democracy, it should dictate eventually what the policies of whether they be Europeans or Latin Americans or Asians or Africans occur, okay? What's reflected. And I think you make a very insightful comment when you talk about the real danger being that the Muslim world begins to hate Americans rather than just America.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
I think that is very, very critical. That's why people on this dais, like myself, are expressing concerns, not because I have a different view of the world than you do, or that I embrace what I think is our core, which is the defense of human rights, to the end, to go to war for that, okay, for individual freedom and fairness and due process, okay? It isn't just that. It's very selfish. It's selfish in the sense that if we don't care, then that popular support that's so necessary throughout the world to defeat these people once and for all won't exist. It's just not Europe, by the way, Dr. Schuer. You know, Latin America, 86% of a sample that was extracted in Latin America have a negative opinion of the Bush administration. And believe me, I'm not happy about that. I am not happy about that because that impacts my country. And what I'm concerned about is that it will morph into a situation where we have people who begin to hate Americans as opposed to the American government. So we're not, in some cases, we're not all that far off. Although,
I think we probably are not, sir, but I've always looked at American foreign policy as a tool for expanding liberty at home. I've never been one who believed that our particular experiment is exportable. I think there's a massive silliness in believing you can put 800 years of Anglo-American political development from Runnymede to today on a CD-ROM and give it to Mr. Shalaby or Mr. Karzai and ask them to replicate it in 3 months, 3 years, or 3 decades.
well, you know what? I sadly agree with you on that as well, although I have much more hope. I don't think we went about it the right way. I concur with President Bush in terms of the goal of bringing democracy. But the era of Iraq will live with us for generations.